Hello, it's Andrew Eborn here again with another edition of Lives on Lockdown. I'm delighted that my guest will be Vince Melouney. Hey Vince, welcome back. Okay, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hey, that's better. Okay, I'll bring us back in. Here we go. In Sydney, you as a youngster, your sister was doing ballet and so on and so forth. What was the first record you ever had?
The first record I ever had, possibly The Shadows.
The Shadows, okay. You were a big Cliff fan, were you?
No, I've never been a Cliff fan. Nice man, I'm sure. The Shadows were the Shadows were great. You know, I love the Shadows. I used to know, I learned every tune that they ever put out. And me and my band of young guys, we used to play the Shadows. And I suppose that was the first record that I can remember. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So the Shadows without Cliff, though. I mean, Cliff is a lovely man and very talented, and we've talked about him on the show before and things like that. So your first band, and that's the Billy Thorpe one, is that it? And the Aztecs?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Your first band, was that Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs?
Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, no. There was a few bands before that. There was one, we called it the Vibratones, and we were pretty much an instrumental band.
Right.
And there was the surfing sound was sort of happening in Australia, and we were an instrumental band. That was the first one. We recorded a couple of tracks, which were released, and then Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. First of all, it was Johnny Noble and the Aztecs, and I got us a job at a place in Sydney, which was the place to perform at, which was called Surf City. It was right up in King's Cross. It was a converted picture theatre. Huge, massive place, painted all black with all these iridescent footprints and that all over it for the surfing thing. And then we played there, and then Billy joined the band. So it became Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. And we had about 3 number ones. We had a Poison Ivy was the first one we had. That went to number 1. Stayed there for quite some time. And then I think it was Poison Ivy that did it. We were number 1. This is true. This is hard to believe, but it's true. We were number 1 in the charts throughout Australia. The Beatles came to Australia to tour. And that was... we were number 1 the whole time they were in Australia. The whole performance, we didn't get knocked off the top, but the Beatles were 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, but that's pretty cool, I think.
Did they ever talk to you about that? Did you ever have a chance to say, "Haha, but we were number 1"?
To the Beatles?
Yeah.
No, I never got to meet. At that time, I never got to meet them, and I never got to see them play either. They performed in Sydney and Melbourne. I don't think they performed in any of the other states. I never got to see them. I never got to meet them. Just read about it in the paper. It wasn't until many years later, when actually after I'd left the Bee Gees, that I got to meet George Harrison really briefly at Apple Studio, the studio they had at Apple Core, and I got to meet a couple of times. I got to meet Ringo, and the only reason I got to meet Ringo is because Morris and I were good friends during our period together, and I used to call in and see him now and again, only a few times. Him and Lulu had a house just up from Hampstead, and it was a cul-de-sac, and Ringo and Maureen, his wife, I never got to meet Maureen, but they lived down the end of the cul-de-sac. So Morris and Ringo got along really well. You know, they obviously were mates, and but they both had a similar sense of humor. So when I was there for the short period of time I was there, you know, you're always laughing, you know. And Lulu was a lovely person as well. She was really, really very hospitable.
And that's the common element, isn't it, with the brothers? There was this fantastic sense of humor. Robin as well had a great sense of humor, and particularly like the goons and various things like that.
Yes, that's right. They were always, you know, gooning around and laughing and doing crazy things, you know, which was great, you know, because in a band, when, you know, and I mean, we were together for 2 years, and when I look back, I find it very hard to explain the amount of stuff we did in 2 years, you know. When the 6 CD collection came out, quite some time ago now, I couldn't believe it. You know, there was the first 3 albums, Bee Gees' first, Idea and Horizontal, and 3 CDs of outtakes and songs that we recorded that were never used, never released, different versions of songs. 6 CDs full of music, you know.
Amazing, isn't it? And that's one of the things that RJ and I are looking at with Legacy. Robin's son RJ Gibb is looking at that, because there are a lot of unreleased things, but also quite a few unfinished things. And so it's having a look back at those and seeing, now that we've got as many of the former members of the band together as possible, but also with RJ and his fantastic voice and his abilities as a composer, is trying to finish some of those and get some of those unreleases out, which would be great.
Yes, it would. There was some great stuff in there. In fact, this coronavirus has put a bit on the back burner for the moment. But I have a band in America, and we were putting the band together. We were just starting rehearsals, and we had already people interested in booking the show. But we were dealing with, we were playing quite a few songs from the first 3 albums, which is very interesting because there were some great songs in there. And that's when the Bee Gees were actually a 5-piece rock and roll band. And it wasn't until 77 where the guys turned into disco music. But the interesting thing is, I don't know whether you've seen it, but when the Bee Gees came to Australia in 1999 and they performed at Stadium Australia, they, through Dick Ashby and through communication, they asked whether I would come up on stage, because they could invite me up on stage for 3 songs, which I was, of course, over the moon to do. And Barry, when he introduced me, this is actually, it's quite funny. When I went to rehearsals, the guys came out and did their rehearsals. It was March. March in Sydney is hot. You know, it's summer. You know, and so I had a pair of cut-off jeans and a pair of sneakers and a t-shirt. Right. When the guys did their sound check, they came over and I was at the back of the stage. And Barry said to me, "I can see you dressed for the occasion, right?" I said, "Well, you know, it's only rehearsal and it's summer, for God's sake, you know." So when he introduced me on stage, you can actually see it. It's on YouTube. It's not something in my head. He said, we'd like to introduce on stage now somebody who was with us when we wrote our better songs. That's what he said. It really blew me up. And he said, I hope he's not wearing his shorts. Now, there's nobody else in the world that can actually, I don't think, can compete against that. That's pretty cool. And so that was really great. And the songs are really good. I love those earlier songs. They were great. So I look forward to playing them with my band maybe towards the end of next year or something.
No, fantastic. And obviously your father was a tailor, so seeing you in shorts, what did your father think about all of that? Was he understood because it was hot out there?
No, my father, by that time, my father never really agreed with me being a musician. And particularly,
what did he want you to be, Vince?
He wanted me to be a doctor.
I was going to say, because he wanted to be a doctor. So through his son, the opportunity which he didn't have because he was looking after his 3 children and his wife, and couldn't spend the time doing that, I could absolutely see. Of course, he wanted you to be a doctor.
Yes, he did. But the trouble was, at that particular time, if I cut my finger and saw blood, I'd feel really sick. So a doctor was completely out of the question.
Yeah, a doctor who gets sick at the sight of blood is probably not the best career for you, Vince.
No, not a good idea. But and also there was the fact that when I started to learn to play the guitar, and I seriously started to get into it, my mother told me that this acoustic sat in the corner of my bedroom for a year. I didn't touch it. And then she said, you came home one day and that was it. You picked it up and you never stopped it, you know. And also my my schooling went down the tube, you know. I had a mate at school and we had a quiff and we had the right haircut. We were really cool, you know. And I just wanted to play the guitar. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to be a doctor. My father said, well, we'll try you an accountant, you know. Didn't like that. And I went to technical college at night time to do a bit of that. No, that was out of the question. And the draftsman, tried that. No, said, Dad, I want to be a musician. My father didn't like it at all, but my mother said, if that's what you want to do it.
No, fantastic. And who got you that first guitar?
What happened there was, I remember it really, really well. I'm not quite sure how old I was, maybe 12. And there was a knock at the door one day and I was home with my mother. She was cooking some cakes, as mothers did in those days. And this guy said that we're having guitar lessons are opening in Hornsby. You know, do you have a child that would like to learn to play the guitar? So Mum said, do you want to play the guitar? Never even crossed my mind up until that day. So
how old would you have been at that stage, Vince?
I think I was about 12.
Okay.
And 12, yeah, somewhere around 12. So I went to the lesson and they supplied you with a guitar to start off with. But it wasn't to play the guitar like that you strap over your shoulder. It was a Hawaiian guitar, and you played it on your lap and played it like that. Looking back on it, I wish I had taken more notice of the thing, but I didn't take much notice at all. I went along with the lessons, but I never really learned anything. My heart wasn't in it, you know. But as I say, I wish I had, because, you know, it's a wonderful instrument, the slide guitar, either the blues or, you know, a pedal steel, you know. So at the end of it, what you did, you got a free guitar.
Oh, right. Oh, that's good.
Well, it sounded good at the time. It was a pretty crappy guitar, I got to tell you.
Do you still have it?
Beg your pardon?
You still have your very first guitar?
No, I don't have it. I had the guitar, and of course it was set up for an Hawaiian guitar, so the strings were right off the fret, and so I rearranged it. You know, I took the nets out and blah blah blah. So I lowered the Strat because and it sat, as I say, my mother said it sat in the corner for a year. You didn't do anything with it, and then you came home and everything was on. You know, and I was so influenced by rock and roll. I was right from the beginning. And Elvis Presley, you know, King Creole, Jailhouse Rock, Love Me Tender, man, they were so great, you know. They just blew my socks off completely. And all the music that was coming out of America at the time was really the Ventures and, oh, so many.
And you were quite young when you formed your first band. I mean, even in the Aztecs, you were, what, 18 when that was first set up?
Yeah, that was right. The first band I had, I mean, before the vibratones, when I really got into learning to play the guitar, I used to listen to this guy. Funnily enough, it's another story, but which I'll tell you. I'll make it brief.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Vince. Just before you do that, can you move your camera down a bit, because I've got a great spot of your ceiling, and I can see that's better. I can see you in your finery. And what's the T-shirt? What does the T-shirt say on it? Let's have a look. What does the T-shirt got on it? It looks like an octopus. On your T-shirt.
No, it says.
There you go. Tentacles of an octopus. That's especially for me, isn't it? Thank you for that, Vince. Very good. There you go. I can see you in your finery now. Fantastic. Yes.
Good. I've got a thing, a hairbrush in front of it. I hope it stays there.
Oh, the hairbrush is good. The hair's looking great as well, so it looks good.
Thank you.
Well, that's what they say at the moment in lockdown. It's locks down because nobody get to a barber anymore. So it's all going to be long hair, which is
growing longer and longer. That's
right.
Absolutely. That's cool.
Anyway, you're telling me about your first band and the story about that, yes, but how you got that set up.
There was I really got into jazz. I loved rock and roll and jazz, and I had an album of Tal Farlow. He was very instrumental in his influence, and Tal Farlow. And what was the other one? I had another one. But anyway, what happened was I had this beautiful. Well, Billy thought in the Aztecs. After the first guitar and the vibratones, and what happened was I was practicing like crazy, and the musicians that I would get to come and join me were weekend musicians, you know, the plumber during the week or whatever. And so I was getting ahead of them. So I'd leave the band and form another one, and then form another one, because I always wanted to have guys in the band who were better than me, so that I would be influenced by them, and I would, you know, no good being in a band where the rest of the musicians are not very good, and you're wanting to go, you know. And so after quite a few things, I bought myself. My mother bought it for me, a beautiful Epiphone 335. They didn't call it a 335. It was called an Epiphone Sheraton. But it was really an Epiphone. It was before Gibson bought out Epiphone. It was a real live, it was a beautiful guitar. But when I decided to come to England, I had to sell everything I had and to get money for my wife and I to catch a boat to England. Of course, jumping a little bit here, but I was so influenced. Everything was English at that time on the, you know.
You love the Shadows, as you said earlier, yes.
The Shadows were way back,
yeah.
And they got some airplay, but mostly on the radios you got American stuff at that time. But it changed when I was about 15. Everything on the radio was English. You know, all the Animals, the Who, the Beatles, the Stones, you name it. It all came out of England. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. You know. So I thought, I've got to go there, you know. I'm Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. I've done my thing here. I've got to #1 in the charts. Not that I was intending to do that. I just wanted to play. But, you know, luck took me that way. And so I wanted to go to England. So I had to sell everything, absolutely everything I had. And I don't know whether you know the story about Ian Morris and the clothes. Do you know about that one?
No, tell me.
Oh, no, it's gone again.
I can see you. Oh, no. Are you still there, Vince? Hello? I can still see you.
Yeah.
I can see you. You can see me?
Oh, good. All of a sudden, all of a sudden it just stuck.
Oh no, there we are. I think the hamsters are working extra overtime in Shepton Mallet, aren't they? So it's got to be.
Absolutely.
It's a satellite dish to Shepton Mallet all the way from here. It's going to be good. I can see you beautifully and clearly. If you do get cut off, I'll always bring you back. So yes. So but before you tell me about that, Morris, you had your first introduction to the Bee Gees was actually they were on a B side of one of your records, weren't they? Tell us about that.
Yes, they were. I knew the Gibb brothers, and the way that I knew them was of course, when you played somewhere, a lot of the time there were like 5 or 6 different groups on that would play there, or you would go to do a television show, and there'd be 4 people, 4 different groups there. So that's how I got to meet the Gibb brothers. I have a photo which is. I think it's in Australia. I don't have it here. It's unfortunately, it's in some stuff I have in Australia, and it's a picture of this guy there called Johnny O'Keefe. Yeah, Johnny O'Keefe was like a massive star. He was huge, rock and roller, and he had a television show called 6 O'Clock Rock. And there's this black and white photo, this tiny little photo. I don't know who took it. I don't know how I got hold of it, but there's Johnny O'Keefe at the microphone, Billy Thorpe at the microphone. Then there was a roster where the Aztecs were all on, and down the side of the roster was the Gibb brothers.
Oh,
there was this photo. Unbelievable. Who would think at that time that I was going to be a part of these guys? It was quite astounding. Looking back at it.
And you still got that photo, so you have to dig that out for us next time. We'll have a look at that.
I think it's in Australia. I left a whole bunch of stuff in Australia that I had, and I'm pretty sure it's amongst that. But I will have a look to see whether I have it. The next time I see you, if I do, I'll make a copy for you.
No, fantastic. So the B side then, so you saw them on the same bill.
Yeah, right. Sorry.
I Need Your Loving Tonight, wasn't it?
That's right. There was another one too, I think, that they did. They were working out at a studio, at Ozzie Burns' studio out at Hurstville, I think it was. And it was behind a butcher shop, I think. And I went out there they must have asked me to come and play guitar on something, pardon me, and which I did. And when I see Barry again, I just don't remember what one they were. So when I see Barry again, I have that question, do you remember what they were? And but they also sang vocals on a couple of tracks which I did out there. Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Excellent. And the B side was Mystery Train, wasn't it?
Was what? Mystery Train.
Mystery Train was the B side.
Yeah, that's right. Mystery Train. And there was another one I think that they did, but I just can't be quite sure about that. That they certainly were on that, which is quite amazing.
But Barry, Robin, and Morris were all on your B side of Mystery Train. So, extraordinary. So when was that? Obviously, you got on very well with them. You did that sort of stuff. You then came to England. Did you come to England because you've been invited to join the band, or did you come to England anyway and then get invited to join the band?
No, it's a really amazing story, actually. What happened was I was saying I wanted to sell everything that I had to go to England. You didn't get paid very much money back in those days, and to get to England, it was quite expensive on a boat.
Do you remember how much it was?
No, I don't. But it was quite expensive. And if you wanted to catch a plane, which there weren't too many going, you had to sell your house to get a train ticket, a plane ticket. It was so expensive.
How long did the boats take?
About 6 weeks. The boat we caught went from Sydney to Genoa in Italy. That was the end of the trip. And then from there, we caught a train across Europe through. And what happened was Diane and I, when we got to Folkestone, caught the boat across into Folkestone, the guy who was the immigration guy there was not a nice man at all. Not a nice man. And he said, "You can't stay here. Why you got all these clothes?" And we said, "Well, we come from Australia. It was summer when we left. Halfway across in the boat, it was summer. then it became winter, and we'd heard about the cold weather in England. You know, we brought these warm clothes with us, you know.
Did you bring shorts with you as well, just in case?
More than likely. And so they weren't going to let us in. So the guy said, we're going to put you up in a house tonight, a detention house, and tomorrow we'll take you to the plane, put you on a plane back to Australia, because we didn't have much money with us. So, but first of all, what he did, the immigration guy, he got a policeman in and he said, take him down to the boat and send him back to France, right? And the policeman, he was really a nice guy. You know, the immigration guy was really horrible and the copper was really great. And we walked down, and I think Diane was crying, you know, and he said, you don't want to go back to France, do you? And we said, no, we don't go back to France. So he came back and said, the French won't take him. So they put us in this house, and then the next day we came down thinking that we're going to be deported back to Australia. And they said, we'll give you a month to get your parent, to get in contact with your parents, to get some money, to get a plane, go back to Australia. So we had a month to try and sort something out. And here was I, 21 years of age, coming from Australia, you know, so naive and so innocent, had no idea. And but due to a great deal of so what happened was, Diane had a friend in Australia who had a friend in Edgware in Middlesex, and contacted her, and her and her husband were going to let us stay there for a little while. So we did. We caught the train and we got to Edgware, and we stayed in the house of Jill and Colin, and that was really lovely. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but my friends, the Easy Beats, were in England. They'd just had a hit, or the hit was just coming up with Friday on My Mind.
Right.
And
great song, love that song.
God, great song, just fantastic. And I think it's gone down in Australian musical history as the best song ever.
And the best song ever, good heavens.
Yeah, as far
Kylie
as...
will be upset about that, won't she?
Who?
Kylie, who? That's show business for you. Kylie, remember her?
Yeah, of course I do, yeah. I think it was amongst the Australian, it certainly wasn't, you know, the best song in the world, but it was the best song in Australia. And I go along with that. I think it's fantastic. I mean, even David Bowie did a copy of it.
He did, no, fantastic version. I love that song.
Oh, so do I, fantastic. So somehow or other, Diane and I got a job, and we were able to extend our visa. We went to the Home Office, which was really not a nice place to be. Bad place, bad vibes. It was all grey and drab, and all the people working there were grey and drab, and it was scary, you know, from a young guy coming from Australia. So anyway, went there and they extended our visa another month or 2 months or something like that. And I found that the Easy Beats were in town. I don't know how I found that out, but I did, and I found out where they were. So I used to go and see them. They were living in Wembley Central, and I'd catch the bus and the train and everything, go over there, and I'd hang around with the guys at the weekend because I was working during the week at Simca Motors. And one day I was there, and somebody came. I have a recollection it was somebody from their recording company. And they said, oh, by the way, the Bee Gees are in town. And I said, wow, that's fantastic. You know, do you have a phone number?
Artist, that's what you said. They'll do another B-side for me.
Well, there was a part that I left out that I'll just go back to it briefly so you know what's happened. When I was doing the recording at Ozzy Burns' studio, and I told Morris, because Morris and I were pretty much the same size, same height, same build. And so I had all these clothes because Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, we used to wear really sharp suits, and we were really sharp.
That would please your father, of course. So none of the
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, my! Love the suits.
that's my son, you know.
Hmm.
And
Proud moment.
yeah, absolutely. And so I said to Morris, you know, I'm selling all my clothes, my shoes, because I had some really nice shoes, handmade shoes, and they're handmade shoes. Were they then? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, so Morris said, oh, I'd like to buy them, right? So I bought out the trunk of my father's car was just full of all these clothes, right? So Morris tried them on, and he got all the clothes, and he decided on the ones he wanted. He gave me the money, but he was this is a true story. He was $25 short.
Oh no!
Right, he was $25 short. So then I go to England, and I'm in England, and the guy says I got the number, and my wife and I were skint. We'd moved out of Edgware, and we were living in a bedsitter at Finchley Central, and so. But this guy had the phone number of the Bee Gees, right? So I phoned him up. I can't remember who answered the phone, but I said, "Morris there." So Morris came on the phone and said, "How are you, mate?" You know, he said, "Oh, great. How was the trip across in the boat?" "Oh, really good. Yeah, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, by the way," I said, "me, Diane and I are skint. You wouldn't have that $25 you owe me, do you?" And he said, "No, we don't." He said, we're skint too." He said, "But we've just been signed up by this guy called Robert Stigwood, and we're doing a recording next week. Why don't you come and play guitar?" Right? So I said, "Fantastic, that's great." So he gave me the name of the place and the address. But the only problem I didn't have a guitar because I'd sold it, right? So my good friend Harry Vander from the Easy Beats had a nice Gibson 335 stereo. And so I asked Harry, and I said, "I'm doing this thing with the Bee Gees. Can I borrow your guitar? I haven't got a guitar." So he kindly lent me this magnificent guitar, right, to take. So I went in and found the studio just off Oxford Circus. And what was it? I can't remember the name of the studio in my head at the moment. So I walked in there, and that was the end of my old life. My old life just was left at the front door. My whole life changed that night, completely and utterly changed. It was the first time I'd met Colin Peterson. I'd never met Colin before. Colin and I got along really well. Superb drummer, wonderful drummer. And that night we recorded New York Mining Disaster. And that was, that was it.
I mean, changed Revlin, because you were lead guitar on the first 4 albums, didn't you?
Yeah, I did the first 3 albums, and I think there's 3 or 4 tracks on Odessa.
Yeah.
I did. I handed in my resignation. I think we must have already done a couple of tracks for the. We must have done the tracks in Atlantic Studios, and already I came back to England and said, "Sorry, guys, I want to go. You know, I'm not happy anymore." And Stigwood said, "You can't leave now. We've got a German tour. You know, can't replace you in that time." So he said, "If you do the German tour, I'll give you your releases and you can go." So I did the German tour, came back and left the group.
And that was on the 1st of December 1968, wasn't it?
No, 69. It must have been
69?
About February 69 or something.
February
like that.
was the last of the German tours. Okay, but around that sort of time.
Yeah, it was definitely at the beginning of 69.
Okay.
And it was really sad, but everything had just, I said to Colin Peterson, "Mate, it's time to go, the show's over, it's finito." And he said no. For him, he didn't think so. But my prediction came true. I left, and then Robin left, then Colin left. Then there was Barry and Morris. They both did a solo album, but which I don't know whether, I'm not quite sure whether they ever came out. But so I used to go and see Barry now and again. A couple of times went to see Barry. Robin I never got to see. He was really good friends with Colin. We weren't bad friends or anything. He just was very, Robin was, he kept to himself. He was very, he kept to himself. He didn't, which was cool, you know. He was with Molly, and they were happy wherever they lived. But I saw Barry a few times. He was living down at Eaton Square, and of course I go and see Morris up at Hampstead, and not often, you know. I went there maybe 3 times, and just call in and say hello, you know, get into their lives or anything, and yeah. So there you go.
And when you, I mean, you say you realised it was the end. What sort of things made you realise that?
Well, it started like I've got a photograph, a very early photograph that somebody gave me, and we all look so gorgeous. We've got beautiful smiles, the innocence, naivety. It was so beautiful, you know, really, really beautiful. You can see it in the way we look, you know, it shows. And but slowly over a period of time, there was so much friction, mainly between the Gibbs, and mainly between Robin and Barry. Barry's spoken about it. I've heard interviews with him, so I'm not talking out of school, you know. And there was lots of problems, you know, and they just became, the more famous that we became, the more difficulties there were. There was people whispering in the ears of the Gibb brothers things that had no business of theirs, you know, because Morris had a driver and he was also acting as a butler, and you know, just big, and then all these hanger-oners, you know, and that's just nonsense, you know. Looking back at it, had I not had the head on me of something 20 years older, you know, I would have brushed him aside and said, "Go away," you know. But that wasn't the case, you know. I really didn't know very much, but I knew, my instincts have always been pretty good. I knew that it was on the cards, that it was happening. And because Barry was getting the lead vocal on many of the songs, and Robin didn't like that at all. He felt that he was being looked over, you know. And that caused a lot of conflict between Barry and Robin, you know. Robin, then Morris, it was affecting Morris as well, because Morris started to get into drinking, and he was drinking pretty heavily. And so the innocence that was there in the beginning had gone, and it was no longer there, and it was no longer fun, you know. It was just not fun anymore. And whereas the beginning, up until nearly the end, you know, it was fun, you know. But Stigwood wanted more strings, you know. Can't have that guitar going, you know. Get rid of that guitar, put the strings in there, you know. So there was nothing for me to do, you know. Like I couldn't, you know, create anything that had he not put the strings in, and had there not been the conflict, you know, I really do believe that the Bee Gees still would have been a massive success. Whether it would have been as big as the Saturday Night Fever and the disco era, I can't say, of course. But we were heading in a good direction, you know. We had Words was a hit, To Love Somebody was a hit, Massachusetts was a huge hit. I Started a Joke, you know, classic, you know. And but it finito, you know, it was really bad. It was really, I really was so sad about it. It was it took ages to get. In fact, I don't really know whether I've still got over it. You know, we did a documentary that's coming out by Nigel Lawson, is it? You know, the documentary that they're doing, the Bee Gees.
Yes.
Bee Gees. And when they came to Germany to interview myself, Blue, and Dennis, when it happened to Blue as well, I noticed, I don't know whether it's catching, but when we're talking, all of a sudden, this huge emotion came over me. Huge emotion. I got wet eyes. I had to stop for a minute. I thought, where did that come from? Why is that? You know, that's strange. I still don't really know.
Well, it's still, and what happens is when you're on the road, and this happens a lot with many artists, and I talk to many people around the world, it's like a big family. And because it's a big family, you're going to have your rows, you're going to have your bits and pieces, you're falling out, you get back together again. But it hurts, and it's still unfinished business, isn't it?
The what, sorry?
It's still unfinished business, and that's the problem, because you are so close, and would have been so close on the road, that sometimes it's unfinished. And as a result of it being unfinished, it means that the hurt is still there.
Right, I'm with you, yes. Right. Yeah, that's more than likely it. I mean, we did some great stuff, you know. I look back at it and I see some of the film clips, you know. I was just looking at one yesterday when Barry's singing To Love Somebody. And it's just so great, you know, some of the stuff and some of the places. We didn't do a lot of touring. We mostly, as you know, we mostly toured in Germany. I think we did a couple of things in America. And America was strange because they loved the record, but they didn't want to see the show. Didn't want to come to the gig, you know. But yeah, it's really sad, you know. It destroyed Colin Peterson, poor Colin, you know. Feel sorry for him. He was such a good drummer, a really good drummer.
And he took it very badly, did he?
Beg your pardon?
He took it very badly, Colin.
Colin took it really badly because Colin, I'll let you tell if you ever come across him. He'll tell you the story. But when he left the band, you know, there was bad problems going on, really bad stuff, and it affected him for the rest of his life, you know. And should never have happened. Should never have happened. It did. So.
Well, what sort of things happened?
It's not really for me to say. He had a problem with the fact that basically he was sacked, which was not good. You can't do that. You don't do that. You speak to the person and find out whether but no. And it was Stigwood's downfall. You know, the band that he got going, you know, and I have to say in his defense, you know, that he always selected the song that was going to be the single, which created, of course, problems between Barry and Robin because who sang the main done. But everyone he selected was a hit. Everyone. And when we said, no, we want to choose what's going to be our single. And we said, we want Jumbo as the single. And he said, oh, yeah, no. And he said, anyway, we pushed it. He said, okay. And he put the singer sang his song on the other side, right? Jumbo died, didn't it? Didn't even get an airplay. So he reversed the A side and the singer sang a song, became a hit. You know? So say, hey, okay, you got it. Whatever comes, whatever you say, we'll go. Oh man, funny.
No, it is funny. And as you say, I mean, you're also the only person who, other than the Bee Gees, who had a song on the album, which you wrote yourself, Such a Shame. So tell me about that.
Such a Shame. It was very interesting. If you break down the lyrics my way at the time, I was saying it's all messed up, it's all gone, it's screwed, you know, it's buggered, finished, it's all over, you know, all this bullshit that's going on, you know, that's what it's all about, the end of the show. And the funny thing is, when I played it in the studio, I said, hey, I've got this song, you know. There wasn't any like, you you know, after that stage, there was no problems in the studio. It was really great. We had a great time, and there was some really interesting things. I mean, Morris never got the accolades that he should have got. He was brilliant. He'd just come up. He couldn't play the piano like Andre Previn or anything like that, but he'd just come up with these great lines, you know. And his bass playing, he was so influenced by Paul McCartney, and his playing was brilliant. You know, you listen to those old things and listen to the bass and the mellotron and the keyboards and the piano. What is there one? There's one that he does that I hadn't heard for years and years. I just can't think. It's mainly a piano piece with Robin singing, I think. I just can't think of it, whether it's And the Sun Will Shine or can't remember. But I hadn't heard it for years, and I heard it, and I said, whoever I was with, I said, who played piano on that, right? They said, Morris. I said, I gotta be kidding, man. It was so good, you know. The feeling was in it. The notes were perfect. He couldn't have selected any other notes. They were exactly the right notes, you know. And he was great, you know, and we used to get along really well. We used to play. In fact, I was really heavily into the Cream and Eric Clapton, you know, and particularly the sound of the Les Paul, you know, through a Marshall. Right. And so we used to Strange Brew, you know, we used to mess around with that. And we actually played it at a performance once. Right. Somebody's got a recording of it somewhere. Somebody recorded it. But we used to have a real lot of fun, and not only that, it showed the talent of the Gibb brothers writing. What happened was, at the studio, oh God, I can't remember the name of the studio. I can see it as clear as day. The studio was downstairs. You used to go up the stairs, quite steep, to the control room, right? But downstairs there was a door that led to an outer room. And Colin and I used to play chess.
Right. Who used to win? Who won the chess? Who was better?
It was 50-50, really.
Oh, okay, well, that's good. It makes it an exciting game.
Well, we were pretty into it, you know. We were pretty much there. And but so the Gibbs would say, why don't you go and have a game of chess? We haven't quite got our thing together, right? So they'd come out. This is how spontaneous it was, and it comes across in the recordings, you know. Perhaps there's a bit too much reverb and a bit too much this, but the feeling comes across in there because they were spontaneous. They weren't worked to death until there's nothing left, you know. And so the guys would call us out, you know. They say, hey, we've got the song, come on, you know. So Barry they'd sing it, and Barry would play the chords. So I'd learn the thing, and Colin had learned what he's going to do in the drums. Wasn't much time spent on it at all, right? So they say, okay, run the track, you know, run the tape, you know, run the tape. We put it down, maybe a second take, maybe, you know. Now that's good, right? Off we go. We'll go on and do the next one, you know. And the guys, how they worked was quite amazing, because somebody would have an idea, you know, like Robin and say, hey, I've got this idea, you know. And so they take the idea, throw it in to the three of them. 10 minutes later, they got a song, you know. It was unbelievable, you know. I had that experience of, if I may say something, just talk about that just for a minute. In 1977, I'd left the Bee Gees. I was well and truly gone, but I kept in contact with Barry and Morris, not very often, but now and again, you know how you go on. And they'd moved to the Isle of Man, and so I had all these songs. I had a little cassette player about this big, tiny little cassette thing, and I had all these songs. I had tapes and tapes of them, cassettes and cassettes of them. But I could only get, like, I'd find a really good riff, or I'd find a really good middle eight, or I'd find something, you know, but I could never finish the songs, right? I could never make these things into anything. So I phoned Barry and told him my frustration in 1977. So he said, come on over. So I jumped on a plane and went to the Isle of Man and stayed at Barry's house for about 3 days. I got to see Morris over at his house, Morris and Yvonne, yeah. And so Barry said, we went into the living room. You know, we'd had that coffee and whatever, cup of tea. So we went into the living room, and this big living room. Barry had a big table in front of him, and he had his Gibson Jumbo acoustic. And I brought my guitar over. I don't know what I had, but what I had. And shut the door. Nobody came in except for George, which was Linda's father. He'd knock on the door and he'd come in and he'd bring us cups of tea, because Barry loves his tea, loves his cup of tea. So he'd bring in this cup of tea, and so he'd go out again. So Barry said to me, and I swear this is true, I've told a few people, I don't think they believe me. And so Barry said, put the tape on, let's have a listen, right? So I put the cassette on and went through a few things, and then he said, stop it there, just take it back a little bit, right? So I took it back, he played it again, he said, okay, that's all he heard. All he heard. So he got out his guitar. No, he didn't get out his guitar. He got out his yellow foolscap pad, and he wrote the song maybe 10 minutes, and I couldn't believe it. So not only did he write it in 10 minutes, which is, that's pretty cool, he picked up his guitar and played and sang it straight away. He didn't say, that's too high for me. I wonder whether this chord will go. Maybe I could put a diminished chord, or, nothing like that. Oh, he picked up the guitar and played the bloody thing, Like, holy crap, that was unbelievable. On the second song, we did 2 songs. The second one, he did it again, a very similar thing. He was writing, but he got stumped on the words. And he was there for a moment, and the phone rang. He was right next to where he was sitting. He picked up the phone, and I remember it so vividly, and all he said on the phone was, yeah, no, yeah, maybe, things like that. He never got into a discussion. Put the phone down, finished the song. So while he was talking to this person on the phone, must have been running through his head what was stumping him finishing the lyrics. So we recorded, he wrote it, picked up the guitar and played it. And we recorded it on the cassette. I've got a recording of it. There's 2 songs. Absolutely. Barry's voice, pitch perfect, absolutely pitch perfect. And on this little cassette player, the quality was, you can hear him clearly, you can hear the guitar clearly, you can hear my twinkling in the background clearly. And so Barry, I couldn't sing them because they were much too high, particularly both of them. But the first one, Morning Rain, I went back to Australia in 1980. Oh, that's right. Before I finish, Barry said to me, Vince, this is, I can't remember what month it was, but it must have been maybe around March or something like that, 1977. Maybe you're not quite sure about that, but I know it was 1977. And Barry said to me, Vince, the next big thing that's going to hit is disco. And of course, bang, there it was, I took the songs back to Australia in 1980, which is only 3 years after the disco era, where when, Bee Gees were playing, everybody was playing the Bee Gees, In fact, people were in America were saying, it's a Bee Gee free afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, because they were just getting so much airplay, And I tried to sell the songs. I took the songs along to, what do you call them? The companies that do that. I can't think what they're called. Publishing companies. Took them along to publishing companies. Couldn't give them away. Could not give them away. Disappointed me an enormous amount. There's these 2 great, neither one is a single, but they were great songs. With Barry singing them. There he is. There's the song. Barry Gibb. Don't you want a Barry Gibb song? Barry Gibb and Vince Melouney, but Barry Gibb. couldn't give them away. Drove me insane. Well, it really made me feel bad. Colin and I were treated like that in Australia the whole time. That's why I'm here.
Well, and it is, to use your words, such a shame, isn't it? But it's also a pattern that, and it's encouraging, if you like, for other musicians. You have to keep chipping away and have faith in what you're doing, and eventually people will pick something up, won't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Yeah. Anyway, I still got the song, so maybe someday.
Oh no, well we'll definitely hear some of those, and maybe include those in the legacy or something. It'd be fantastic. Get the unreleased one. But going back to Such a Shame, Such a Shame was the only thing not written by the Bee Gees on the album, but it was only on the UK version and not the US version. Why was that?
Stigwood didn't think that it was appropriate to go on the American release, so he took it off. And the funny thing about that song, which I forgot to mention, is Barry loved it. He really loved the song, and he asked me, could he sing it? And looking back at it in hindsight, I wish I had said, yeah, you're good, you do it. You know, then maybe it might have got on the US album.
And that was all about your experiences. You say the words were all about your experiences and the difficulties at that time. It's a commentary, if you like, but that snapshot of history.
Yeah, it was such a shame. It really was. I couldn't find any better words to put at that time. It was this beautiful thing that was happening was falling apart, you know, and due to silliness, due to egos and all that nonsense, you know.
But as you say, the hurt is still there. And interestingly, I mean, for the US version, it was replaced by "Gotta Get a Message to You."
Oh, well, that I couldn't remember what. Right.
See, I'm filling you in on the Bee Gees trivia. This is good, isn't it? It's got to be good. I can fill you in on the Bee Gees trivia, so it makes it all worthwhile. So, "Gotta Get a Message to You." What's the story behind that song?
Got to get a message to you. I don't know. What do you mean? The lyrically?
Yeah, so I mean, interesting. You're saying "Such a Shame" was a message about the breakdown and so on and so forth, but "Gotta Get a Message to You." It's sort of interesting when we talk to other people about constructing the albums and how people decide what's going to go on, what's not going to go on. But the reason that "Such a Shame" wasn't the US version, you're saying, was political.
It was political. Yeah, I'd say it was political more than anything else. And I do, you know, I just can't take myself completely back to that to give you an exact answer on it. But I just don't remember. I remember Stigwood saying it wasn't going on. I guess he felt that it just wasn't. I mean, maybe he realized what it was all about. Maybe he actually deconstructed it and realized I can't have this on there. You know, this is about the downfall of the Bee Gees. You know, and I don't know really. I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And how was your relationship generally with Stig?
With Stigwood?
Yeah.
I've never had a problem. I mean, he never any dramas. You know, I never had a problem. There was one time that what happened was when we had Robert Stigwood and David Shaw had rustled up a contract for everybody to sign right in the beginning, which we did. And I've still got that contract, and I think it's about a 3-page contract. But about a year later, or thereabouts, they had another contract for us to sign, which was about 32 pages long, right? So Colin and I were we wanted to find out what it meant, because there was a lot of legal talk and a lot of stuff that we just had no idea what it meant, you know. And so we went to see a lawyer and said, "Can you explain this to us?" You know. So after they explained it to us, we decided, no, not going to sign this contract, you know. So we didn't, and but the Gibbs did. They signed, and
what sort of things were in the contract?
To be honest, I just don't remember. But there was a lot of control over stuff that we did. The percentages were not so good, and it was sort of aimed more in Stigwood's direction than in our direction. And I mean, I wish we had kept it. I mean, Colin Peterson still may have it. I don't really know, but it would be interesting to read today. But it was a long contract, and it undertook. I mean, no doubt there's got to be a lot of things done. I understand that, but there was obviously, for both Colin and I to both say, not a chance. You know, there was certainly things in there that we didn't like, but I don't remember what they were. But the Gibbs signed, and they were happy with that. But it came down on I think many years later, which perhaps RJ knows about, that you know, they did sort of have a legal tussle with Stigwood, and something was worked out in that. I don't know the details of that.
Yeah. So the last, effectively you're leaving the band was announced in the music press, I think, in November 1968. It was announced, and then it was going to be the final concert in Germany. Who made the decision to feed the story to the press?
Who made? I don't know. I don't know who did that. I was in a mess at the time, to be honest. So I was not thinking or looking clearly.
Oh, we seem to have frozen you again. So what we'll do, we'll take a break. We'll be back straight after these messages. Join us next time for Lives on Lockdown with Vince Melouney.
Back with you. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, unfortunately, Huey never looked. They were his boys, you know, and who are these guys? You know, what do they do? You don't need them, you know. But of course they did, you know, because for that time we wanted a band. Otherwise, you would get, you know, a couple of session players in and they'd come and do something. But when you're a band, it's a different thing. You all work together. You know, what about this? What about that? Hey, try this. Let's try that. You know, and your friends. I got a low battery.
Oh, you got. Don't worry. We'll take a little break. Join us after this next episode, coming up in the next part, while Vince recharges his battery. Join us here. Very good. For now, Vince, hold that story, and we'll come and join you ready for next time. Lives of Lockdown here with Andrew Eborn and Vince Melouney, coming up very, very soon. So that's Vince Melouney. We're going to be joining him again in the next episode. If you have any comments, do put them in the comments below. And if you have any questions or you want to take part in the series, write to me at Legacy, that's Legacy, Legacy, at octopustv.com. Don't forget to subscribe to Octopus TV for exclusive access and exclusive content. Until next time, it's Andrew Eborn. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.